Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to Season 22 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. Tonight here at Bristol Motor Speedway for 150 laps of competition here for round number 5 on the season. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this is the shortest race on the schedule in terms of actual race distance here, coming in at only half a mile in length. That means only 75 miles of total competition, and that's 0.85 kilometers for those of y'all who don't use freedom units. But open up back in 1961, 12th visit to this track by the ASRC League as a whole, but only the 6th time by the Oval Series. Those other 6 visits, well, all those were by the Dirt Series. But there's been 5 unique racers, or 5 unique winners for every single race so far. Brian Sabelski, Kevin West, Garrett Hess, Michael Moultrie, and Daniel Sparks, all drivers that have signed their name on the record book here at this speedway. And as an honorable mention over in the dirt side of things, back in 2021, Jason Mong took home 4 of those 6 Dirt Series wins. The other 2 being Jeremy Vaughn and Marshall Sotart. But in the Oval Series side of things, in our last 2 visits, we've had 10 cautions, averaging out to 2 cautions per race. And actually, it's been kind of all over the place in terms of the cautions out here. We've had 3 races with none. Then we had a race with 8 and a couple races with 2. So that 8 caution race, that's a little bit of an outlier here. So hopefully things don't go quite that crazy here tonight. Taking a look down here at the standings coming into tonight's event, it is going to be Mark Kluge leading the point standings, just barely over teammate Joshua Rudolph back in second. Then back in third is going to be Jason Williams, followed by Doc Jones, Mike Rossi, your top 5 in points. Then we have Ted Wallace, Bo Johansson, Curtis Colwell, Ray Parson, Mick Jacobs, your top 10 in points. Of course, these are only 4 races complete so far out of the, I believe, 18 race season we have here so far. So definitely a long way left to go before we settle the score and crown ourselves a champion. But this is how things are looking for right now. And of course, down at the bottom, you see Sabelski and Alicia, who both unfortunately have not been able to run full time here this season. But both of them are out here on the track here tonight, competing to try and get some points back to their name after the, I guess, not so great starts they've had to their season here so far. But it does look like drivers are making their way down to the starting grid. So how about we take a look down there right quick at how our starting lineup will be here for tonight's event. Starting out on the front row here, it's going to be the driver who took home the win last week at the Darlington Raceway. 6-time league champion in the Makoni Setup Shop 85. That's going to be none other than Brian Sabelski. Starting to his outside, making his second start of the season in the SRC's Foundation number 7 machine. That is going to be none other than Kevin Alicia. Back in third, that's going to be the Grillo's Pickle 45 of Mark Kluge, who got his second ever league win just a couple races ago, followed by teammate Joshua Rudolph in the 18 Rowdy Forever entry, the other driver of that team who also took home his second league win earlier on this season. Then back in fifth, it's going to be the 154 machine of Mike Rossi in that Liquid Death entry. That's a driver we're definitely going to be having to keep our eyes on tonight because they caused a lot of shenanigans, let's say, back at Darlington last week involving several of our front-running drivers. I'd imagine they're not super happy with him. We did see some contact with that 154 in practice as well. Looks like there might have been some talking to with that 154 machine before the race started, so I'll have to keep an eye on that. But how about back in 6th, the 122 of Lamar Stevens in that Quaker State entry, a driver that has been really struggling so far this season, having their, I believe, best start so far in season number 22. Back in 7th, though, that's the 143 of Ted Wallace in the Advent Health entry, followed by Mick Jacobs in the 101 Kubota car. That's going to be Doc Jones in the 124, followed by Anne-Marie Jackson back in 10th in the 123. Then how about Jason Williams 11th, Cole Matrick back in 12th. That'll be Danny Yates, Bo Johansson, Ray Parson, and Curtis Colwell rounding out your 16-car field here tonight. Jason Gardner, unfortunately, not making the call of the grid, but green flag is up in the air. We are racing here at the Bristol Motor Speedway. Through turns 1 and 2, so far so good. Nobody's caused anything too substantially silly quite yet here, as Brian Sabelski leads lap number 1 here. Will we see Sabelski pull the same hat trick he did last week at Darlington and lead every single lap? We will just have to see. But right now, Sabelski is off to an early lead here. Already up by more than half a second on his on Kevin Alessia back there in that 7 machine. And we have Mark Kluge another half second back from Alessia here. Of course, that sounds like a pretty substantial amount, but you got to remember, this is the smallest track on the schedule. It's only half a mile in length. We are currently turning 16-second lap times around this speedway, so these laps are going to be clicking off really quickly here, and 1 second really isn't all that much actual distance in the grand scheme of things. But as things have settled down up in the front, further back towards the tail end of the field, there are some battles going on. Looking down currently at Cole Matrick and Ray Parson here, battling for the 13th position. Parson up +2 from where he qualified already, trying to hold off that 120 machine who is right on his bumper, but just don't seem like they're able to quite make a move right yet. Lots of side-by-side action in the mid-pack right now. That's the 121 of Danny Yates way up the track, and that's going to allow Emery Jackson to get down beneath him here. But so far, 8 laps into the books, things have mostly single-filed out here. Still a little bit of battling going on between Parson and Matrick here. Parson's fallen back to 14th, Matrick up to 13th, and already just that one pass goes by, and already it's over a half of a second deficit between the two of them, just like that. A little bit further back, this is the battle for the very last position here between Bo Johansson and Curtis Colwell. Colwell down on the bottom, Johansson up at the top. And already you see Brian Sabelski coming up behind them. We're about to have lap traffic 10 laps in to this 150 lap event. That took absolutely no time at all. Now the question is going to be, can Sabelski get around these cars? He's going to give a hard shove to the 148 of Curtis Colwell. Colwell gets a little loose, but he manages to hang on to it, and Sabelski is going to be putting that 148 machine 1 lap down just like that. Not even 10 laps into this race. And already up to a 2-second lead over the rest of the field. Kevin Alessia pretty far back right now. Hasn't put any cars down behind him yet. But what a hectic start to this race. I mean, lapped cars in 12 laps is kind of a feat, even by our standards. I mean, this used to be a short track league for a very, very long time, running street stocks, late models, anything of that sort. And even then, at those sorts of short tracks, we did not see lap traffic within the first 10 laps of the race, as now Sabelski's already put Ray Parson down a lap. Just up ahead of Sabelski, there are 2 cars battling it out for position here. This is Yates and Matrick battling for the 12th position. Both of them are probably going to be looking to be put a lap down here early on in the goings of this one. I can't help but worry a little bit that maybe Sabelski has some sort of nose damage on that 85 machine from that impact with Colwell earlier, though. That was a pretty considerable shunt into the back of that 148 car. I mean, right now it doesn't look quite like Sabelski is having any sort of issues, but we will just have to see here as he now puts Matrick down a lap and is getting ready to put Danny Yates down a lap here as well. All right, now 17 laps in, and 5 cars have been knocked off of the lead lap. And already he's starting to look to try and get up around Emery Jackson. Mick Jacobs not all that far ahead. There's really a big pack of 4. Doc Jones, Jason Williams, Lamar Stevens, Mick Jacobs, all right up in front of this number 85 machine. I always take a minute right on board and just watch him make these moves around these lap cars. Nearly contact there with Amory Jackson, but it's just like Cybelski has a whole extra gear inside of this car. The speed difference is just that considerable. Best lap by Cybelski was a 15.59. The best lap we saw out of, for example, Amory Jackson, who just got lapped, 16.59. So exactly a second off the pace in terms of best lap here. And now you can see Cybelski catching up on this group of four up in front of him. That's Mick Jacobs, Lamar Stevens, Jason Williams, Doc Jones, all leading that little pack here. And it's going to be looking like the same story pretty much. They're just going to hold the bottom line, and Cybelski is going to go sailing on past without a care in the world. Fortunately, not making any contact with any of these other drivers this time. That Exalta car of Doc Jones going up to the high line on corner exit, but sees Cybelski's coming. He's going to drop back down. And already now, 23 laps in, and there's only 6 cars left on the lead lap out of 16 that started this race. And they are 2 by 2 just behind. That is Mick Jacobs battling it out with Lamar Stevens and Jason Williams. Williams up on the high side in that WeatherTech car, trying to make the move happen on the 122 machine, but it's just looking like the high line, unless you're the race leader, I guess, is not quite the place you want to be here. It just seems like Williams is just losing all of his speed up on the top of the track there. And Lamar Stevens down 2 from where he started already in that 122 machine. That was a driver we were talking about that's kind of been struggling here in terms of his season so far. He is the lowest scored driver of the drivers that have made every race so far, with an average finish of let's see here, an average finish of 11.3 in that 122 machine so far here this season. So really not the season that Lamar Stevens has been hoping for, but right now running up inside the 8th spot. I believe if he manages to hang on to this could theoretically be his first ever top 10 finish here this season. How about just behind? We have some more drivers battling it out with lap traffic. Kevin Alessia in second, Mark Kluge back here in third, and Kluge has a pretty considerably punched in front end. So it's looking like Kluge has had the same issue that we have seen out of Brian Cybelski, with possibly getting into the rear end of some lap traffic, but Cybelski not quite getting any sort of damage from it the way that Kluge has here. Currently going around that 188 and 101 machine. That's Williams and Jacobs they're getting around right now. Is already, they're still trying for 2 laps down. Curtis Colwell has now officially gone 2 laps down here tonight. Actually, all of the AI drivers have officially been lapped here by Brian Cybelski, who is just currently in an absolute class of his own right now. It's almost a 6-second lead over Kevin Alessia, who is having some issues here now, some lap traffic, trying to get around that 148. There's trouble. There are cars up into the outside wall. That was, I believe, Jason Williams, who is keeping it pointed in the right direction, but there definitely was some contact there just a moment ago. Let's see if we can't really quickly look back and see what happened here. 3 wide. And that's the 18 machine just behind. Oh, just checked up into the corner, and that's kind of a ridiculous save, but you know what? Fair enough. Jason Williams, he hangs on to it. He's still going. He's getting ready to be 2 laps down now, but he is still rolling, and that in itself is kind of a feat because that was a darn near 90-degree slide in that car. Currently looking down at Ted Wallace, running in the 5th position right now, up +2 from where he qualified. +2 right now is the most improved we've seen out of any of these drivers. Ted Wallace up +2, and Doc Jones is up +2. Everyone else has only changed position by 1 spot or is still running where they qualified. Here's Kluge and Rudolph working together, though, trying to get around that 124 machine of Doc Jones. These are the two drivers we were talking about, teammates here in the ASRC Oval Series, both running for the K9P Racing organization. I'll tell you what, both of them have been having a very good season so far. Pretty much back-to-back-to-back podiums, and they're both hoping that they can keep this trend up for a while. But here's some more battling going on as the 121 and 123 are trying to figure out how to get around Curtis Colwell there. Colwell is just substantially off the pace. Currently, Colwell's best lap times is 17:18, which is a second and a half off of our race leaders and even a second off of most of our lap traffic. So Colwell really, I don't think Colwell unpacked the right car out of the hauler here today. He is just absolutely struggling here by a very substantial margin. He's 8 seconds back from Bo Johansson up in the 15th position. And he, just like that, is about to get lapped a third time by Brian Zabelski. So now 3 laps down in 40 laps. Not the evening that Curtis Colwell has been hoping for. Looks like a little bit further up, Alicia and Kluge have finally gotten some clean air to work with. Joshua Rudolph as well, running 2, 3, and 4 right now. And of course I say that and they start to come up on some lap cars there. I believe that's Rossi that we saw them coming up on. Rossi and Wallace, I believe. Sure enough, that is exactly who it is just in front of them, battling it out for the 5th position here. Both of them being held up by a lapped car in the form of that 104, who's currently back in the 14th position right now. Rossi is going to go up high. Alcia thinks a little bit about putting the nose in, but decides against it. But are we going to stay 3 wide here coming out of turn number 2? Looks like the answer is going to be no. Maybe. Alcia thinks about it, sends the 143 all the way up the track. He looks very eager to punch his way through this lap traffic here in that Save Our Saves Foundation machine. And it looks like Kluge and Rudolph are going to be able to follow him through here. That 154 car, that Liquid Death entry, is a car that, I don't know, ever since last week at Darlington, I've just been very hesitant on. Uh-oh, watch out. There's a car around. There's multiple cars around. Caution flag is out. Alicia and Kluge both hard into the outside wall. And Kluge falls down the raceway, gets contact with the 122 of Lamar Stevens. We were just talking about how much of a struggle Stevens is having here this season, and getting involved in that caution not doing him any favors. It looks like all cars able to get rolling again, but definitely a rough spot for some of these drivers to be in. Let's take a look back here. Let's see what all happened here for these drivers. Taking a look back at Mark Kluge on the high side, and really looks like it starts with Kevin Alicia getting loose on corner exit. Tries to save it, not quite able to. And kind of just picks up everyone else. It looks like Doc Jones might have also been involved there. But just getting loose on corner exit. And both of them come to a sort of a stop up at the outside. Not quite much of one, but fortunately that wasn't worse than it was at the very least. Does look like we have a couple of takers down on pit road. Brian Zabelski comes down along with Joshua Rudolph, Alicia, and Kluge all down on pit lane. Looks like basically everyone else has elected to go ahead and stay out on the raceway here. Well, actually, everyone else is a lap down, so that's probably why nobody else has come down yet, because they can't come down on the same lap as the race leader. So everyone else probably is going to come down next time by, as Sabelski leads the battle off of pit lane, followed by Alicia, Rudolph, and Kluge. No, everyone looks like they're still electing to stay out. There is a little bit of confusion on the starting lineup, it seems like. So we're going to have to wait a minute for... All right, there we go. So now it's waving more or less everyone around, and it's looking like Sabelski. Yep, it's going to be our race leader once we go back to green flag racing. So it's looking like your front runners are going to be Sabelski, Rudolph, and then Kluge, Alicia, Wallace, it seems like. Though it's saying Alicia and Kluge are not on the lead lap here. So I could be mistaken on that. The lights are off on the pace car, though. We're going green flag racing once again. One thing's for sure is that Brian Sabelski is leading this field of green. Green flag up in the air. We are racing once again. And a pretty solid start here by Sabelski. Rudolph tries to go up high and see if he can't make something stick here to catch up to that 85 machine, but not quite able to. And already Sabelski starts to pull away here, up to a half a second lead over Joshua Rudolph. It does look like Kluge and Alicia ended up getting put a lap down under that caution flag, so those two are not in this battle for the race lead right now, but you know, the opportunity to get those spots back is always up for grabs should we have a lucky dog or anything of that nature. But right now, Sabelski leads the field, and it is very bunched back up, very further back in the pack. Lots of two wide battles throughout the field here. Currently looking down at, I believe that's Bo Johansson side by side with the 104 machine of Ray Parson. Parson goes way up the track there. It almost seemed for a moment like we were considering going 3 wide, but fortunately we decided against that, backed out of it there. Already a third of the way through tonight's event, 56 laps complete out of our 150 here, and we're only 17 minutes into this race. I imagine for some of these long-standing drivers here in the series, particularly like Sabelski running here at Bristol, probably brings back some fond memories of the Oval Series back when it was the rookie Oval Series back in the day, where it was all short tracks like this all the time, often tracks even shorter than this, where several of Sabelski's, 6 championships here in the ASRC Oval Series were picked up. So, needless to say, it makes sense that he's feeling pretty much right at home here. We're looking at Mick Jacobs and Doc Jones as they try to work their way around that 148 machine of Curtis Colwell, who was still stuck on a lap all by himself. Nobody else, at least for the time being, is 2 laps down, except for him. And he is just completely holding up these other cars right now. Trying their best to get around him, but right now just not budging off that bottom line at all. Now we see the 101 machine looks like he's able to make some sort of progress start to happen up on that high line, slowly but surely. And here comes race leader Brian Sabelski. He wants to get involved in this party here as well. He's going to scrape against the outside line, getting a little bit loose on entry, it seemed like, but this time around seems like he's doing okay. And just like that, getting around that cluster of lap cars, now going to be putting Curtis Colwell 3 laps down, with Johansson and Parson 2 laps down. So really that wave around really didn't give these lap cars all that much help here. And something interesting to keep in mind, though, is Sabelski, Rudolph, Alicia, and Kluge are the only drivers that came down pit lane under that caution flag. So the very large majority of the field still needs to pit at some point here in tonight's event. Now, I don't know when we're going to see that happening. Probably once we get a little bit closer to the halfway point, but just something to keep in mind that there are a couple of alternate pit strategies going on here in this field. Sabelski now down on the bottom of that liquid death entry of Rossi. Going to get around him without too much issue. That's going to put the 188 of Williams up next on the chopping block in that WeatherTech entry. And there's Lamar Stevens as well. Looks like Stevens does have a little bit of front end damage from that caution. We saw him get clipped by, I believe, Kluge under that yellow flag. Currently, he is running back in the 4th position right now, actually. Which is a pretty impressive feat for him, all things considered, with how the season's been going for him. Up +2 from where he started, and the driver up in front of him, Ted Wallace, is up +4 from where he started. Up, started back in 7th, now running in 3rd. Taking a look at the track map, we can see here how things are spreading out around the speedway. Looks like once Sabelski gets around this 123 machine of Amory Jackson, he should have some pretty clear and open speedway to be working with here. Rudolph back in that 18 machine's kind of in the middle of the cluster of all these cars right now, though, trying to get her underneath or above the 101 machine. He's going to send it up real high around that 188. But it looks like it is going to stick, and you see Alicia just behind trying to follow him through here. Alicia, unfortunately, not on the lead lap anymore after that caution that he was involved in, but you know, if he keeps the momentum up, he should find himself in a spot where he can get back on the lead lap if another caution flag flies, as long as he's not the one that causes it at the very least. Since he and well, maybe not. I was going to say, since he pit already, he might luck out with everyone else pitting, being able to get the wave around, but that's not going to happen because Sabelski's already pit. Sabelski's not going to come down pit lane again just to put Alicia back on the lead lap. So I don't think he's going to be so fortunate in this particular instance, but even with the lucky dogs, there are still ways that we could see some of these drivers work their way back onto the lead lap here. Right now, though, just trying to figure out a way to get around this big cluster of lap traffic, really stuck in just a gaggle of lap cars here. You can see Mark Kluge just behind, suffering from the same issue. Just really having a hard time being able to pass. If you're not on the bottom, it really just seems like you can't make anything happen. So you gotta hope that, you know, these lap cars go up high and let you go by, and that's not going to happen. That's the 154 and Mike Rossi around. Caution flag out for the 2nd time here on the speedway. And I'll tell you what, with how things have gone in the last couple of races, I don't want to say that was unwarranted, but I'm not entirely surprised because Mike Rossi has caused a lot of headache for the K9P racing team over the course of these last few races. Let's take a look back at what brought out this caution flag, though. Mark Kluge running down, trying to get around these lap cars and just right into the back end of the 154 machine. Not a whole lot that Rossi could have done to avoid that. That was a pretty plain and simple dump here. Let's ride on board with this 154 machine and see what he saw going down into turn number 1. Just had the rear tires lifted straight up off the ground, and from there's really not a lot you can do to recover from that. Looks like we're going to see Kluge come back down on the pit lane here under this caution. That should make him the only driver that has made 2 stops here tonight. Sure enough, it is. Everyone else still either only 1 stop to their name or hasn't pit yet at all. Sabelski still your race leader, with Rudolph still up in 2nd. That's going to be Ted Wallace back in 3rd, followed by Lamar Stevens, Kevin Alicia, Mick Jacobs, Doc Jones, Mike Rossi, and currently Mark Kluge is actually scored as your top 10 still, despite being down on pit lane. He has been down there for over half a minute now, so I'm starting to worry that maybe he got some sort of penalty, because that does not seem like a routine stop for that 45 machine. I didn't get any word from race control about there being a penalty, but that seemed like an unusually long stop for that 45 machine, unless there was some sort of damage that we just didn't know about. But we're lined back up 2 by 2. We're going to be trying this thing once again. It'll be Sabelski and Rudolph leading this field back to the green flag. Going to be 80 laps officially complete when we cross the line. 70 to go here at Bristol. Pace car is off. And green flag back in the air, and a monumental leap by Sabelski going down to turn number 1. And actually, Rudolph is going to lose the position to the 123 of Emery Jackson, though, of course, Jackson not on the lead lap, so not quite like it matters. And already, just like that, Sabelski up to a half a second lead right on the start. Rudolph this time trying to take a higher line through the corner, see if that doesn't do anything to help him out here. But he is losing time on our race leader very rapidly here. Already now 0.6 of a second, make it 7. And we only have 3 drivers left on the lead lap. Sabelski, Rudolph, and Ted Wallace, who is all the way back at the tail end of this big gaggle of cars, is all that's left on the lead lap, and we might have trouble. It sounded for a second like there was contact, but it seems like everyone's keeping it pointed in the right direction, so maybe not. Maybe just not anything too significant here. Currently looking at the battle between Mark Kluge and Doc Jones, and there's going to be contact with the 188 WeatherTech car. Everyone hangs on to it, but that was almost real bad real fast. Now side by side for Mick Jacobs and Doc Jones. And that WeatherTech car is actually not a part of this battle. That is Williams back in 13th, so not even part of the equation here, just getting beaten and bumped around, because that's kind of the name of the game here at Bristol. But Kluge's going to work his way up to the 8th position here. Trying his best to claw his way up to the lucky dog spot should another caution flag fly. So he can possibly get involved in this battle for the race lead again, but we'll just have to see there, because there's a whole host of lap traffic he still has to pass to get up there. Right now, Kevin Alessia is the driver in the lucky dog position, running back in the 4th spot with a 2.5 second lead over the rest of the lap traffic, so he's in a pretty comfortable spot right now. Alessia down 2 from where he started. He was up in 2nd on the outside row when we started this thing off, but now back and forth. Ted Wallace still up +4 from where he started. Wallace having a good evening. If I remember correctly, Wallace is one of our 4 winners so far here this season. And speaking of winners, Brian Sabelski, if Sabelski manages to take home the checkered flag here tonight, he will be our first driver in season number 22 to take home repeat wins. So far, every race this season has been a different winner. So we'll just have to see how things play out here this evening. Perhaps things will change. And it would require Kevin Alessia to get back on the lead lap in order to be able to have a driver continue the streak of a new winner every season. And with how this race has gone so far, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to, particularly because Kluge is slowly but surely hunting him down here, trying to get around that lap car of Emery Jackson. But otherwise, in terms of actual position on the scoreboard, Kluge is right behind Alessia. He's just got to figure out how to close up that 4-second gap to the 7 machine, and he'll be good to go. And of course, looking at the track map here, it is half a speedway between him and Kevin Alessia. And that gap really isn't fluctuating all that much. Last time by, a 16:32 for Alicia, 16:39 for Kluge. We'll see if things don't change this time. By now, a 16:29 for Alicia, 16:32 for Kluge. So Alicia is slightly faster than this 45 machine, but there is eventually going to be a whole host of lap traffic for Alicia to have to work his way through. So that might slow him up. We will just have to see. But speaking of drivers being slowed up, here is Brian Sabelski once again putting all these lap cars down another lap just for funsies. You know, why not? Currently putting the 101 machine down to only one lap down. It's going to be 2 laps down when he gets around him, but he also has to worry about that 154 machine of Rossi, who has definitely been involved in the most cautions so far here in Season 22 of any driver, but Sabelski going to get around him instant free. Going to get around that 121 machine of Yates as well and put him back to being 3 laps down. Colwell is already 4 laps down again. Rossi still battling it out with Jacobs there, as now we see Joshua Rudolph coming into the picture. Rudolph has closed the gap down to 1.5 seconds. Last time by was a 16:3 for Sabelski, 16:4 for Rudolph. So Rudolph still has some catching up to do, but he might be able to get lucky with how this lap traffic works out and be able to catch up to Sabelski. In terms of raw pace, it seems like Sabelski is pretty set here tonight, but I mean, there is, 14 lapped cars that our 2 race leaders have to worry about here. And sometimes that's what makes all the difference. But how about we take a moment, let's ride on board with Kluge and see what he sees, or excuse me, ride on board with Rudolph and see what he sees as he tries to work his way up to our race leader. And as we were talking about, lap traffic gives, lap traffic takes away. As soon as Sabelski got a clean racetrack, he pretty much just completely pulled away from Rudolph, back up by another half a second. But how about Kevin Alicia? He has worked his way up to the 3rd position, got around Ted Wallace there. Mark Kluge also involved in this battle, so we could see this turn into a 3-way battle for the Lucky Dog position should the caution flag fly again. And of course, all 3 of them battling for this Lucky Dog spot in the midst of a huge mess of lap cars here. But it's specifically the 7, 143, and 45 that we are looking at here. The 124, the 101, and the 188, they are not a part of this Lucky Dog battle. Alicia has lost the position to Ted Wallace, stuck up on the high side behind the 101 of Mick Jacobs. That's going to allow Wallace and Kluge both to overtake him. But now Wallace runs in the lucky dog position. Kluge going to drop down the bottom. So does Alicia. Now it's just them and Jason Williams up in front of them that they got to worry about. Kluge is going to send it down to the bottom, try and get up underneath the 143 of Wallace, and he is able to do so. Now it's Kluge holding on to the lucky dog position here for the time being. Alicia sends it down low. He's going to get around Ted Wallace as well. That moves Alicia up to 4th, Kluge in 3rd. As there's even more lap traffic for these drivers to have to worry about. There's Rossi, there's Yates, both holding up that 45 machine a bit, as there was almost contact there between Kluge and Rossi, which would not be the first time that we have seen contact between those two drivers. Not in this race, not in this entire series. So definitely something to keep an eye on down there is between the 45 and the 154. Alicia getting a bit loose off the corner. It looked like he had to check up there a little bit, and that's going to allow Wallace to try and make the move on him. Not quite able to, but we are 3 wide. That's probably not going to go well. Big contact between Kluge and Yates. Kluge hangs onto it. Now there's contact, and Rossi's up into the outside wall. Everyone hangs onto it. That's going to allow Alicia to dive down to the bottom and try and get around some of these cars. Ted Wallace still running here as well, trying to stay in this battle for the lucky dog spot. As there's contact behind between Williams, and there's even more contact now between Rossi and Yates. Everyone's just beating and banging and dooring each other now. I don't know what quite happened, but those 3 drivers battling for the lucky dog spot seem to have just completely stirred the hornet's nest here in regards to this battle. It really does look like Yates and Williams just keep bouncing off of each other here, which is not what Sabelski wants to see, as he is trying to put these cars down another lap. Sabelski really does not want any sort of incidents to be going on in front of him. He just wants smooth sailing to the end of this race. But so far, so good for our race leader. And well, now Kluge and Alicia and Wallace are having to start to worry, because if Sabelski puts them all down another lap, they won't have any chance for the lucky dog to get back into this one. Of course, the lucky dog only gives you back 1 single lap, so if you're more than 2 laps down, you're going to have to depend on getting 2 of them. And with only 26 laps left to go in this race, that is not something that you can comfortably try to depend on. Drivers, for the most part, getting out of Sabelski's way. Still a lot of lap cars left to go now. Currently side by side with Rossi, putting him down a 3rd lap. And then there's Ted Wallace in that 143. He's going to be put down a 2nd lap, and that's going to eliminate Wallace's chances, really, to have a lucky dog and get put back onto the lead lap. A little bit further up, Alicia and Kluge still battling for the lucky dog spot, about half a second dividing the 2 of them right now. I say that, and Kluge starts to pull away here just a little bit. We'll take a look at the times between the 2 of them here. Right now, Kluge is the faster of the 2 and continues to be so. It's very close. Both drivers seem to be fairly evenly matched, but it does seem like Alicia is losing ground here. It's now up to about 7/10 of a second deficit between the 2 of them. And with 21 laps left to go, the clock really is ticking here for both of them. And at this point, really, a lot of them are just hoping for a caution flag to try and get the lucky dog and rack this thing back up and try and figure something out with Sabelski in the short run speed, because it definitely seems like the long run speed is not really a lot of these drivers' favor. But there is a lot of lap traffic here in front of that 45 machine, and that's going to allow Kevin and Alicia to slowly but surely make some time up here, as all these lap cars are really holding Kluge up now. That's Emery Jackson, Lamar Stevens, and Ray Parson there that are holding these drivers up, most of which not even on the same lap as each other. They're all just kind of racing for survival here at this point. Alicia and Kluge both trying to negotiate their way around the Quaker State 122 of Lamar Stevens. Kluge having to check up a little bit as Stevens gets on the brakes, maybe a bit harder than he anticipated. Now Alicia tries to poke the nose in there, but I don't think he is quite close enough to be able to do it, and sure enough, Stevens now back down to the bottom. Alicia is going to have to try and make the pass on the top, and we have established that the top is really not quite where you want to be here, unless you're Sabelski and just have a whole extra gear to be working with. But 15 laps left to go for our race leader of Brian Sabelski, who has a 7-second gap over our only other driver on the lead lap, who is Joshua Rudolph in that 18 machine. We're at the point now that Curtis Colwell has gone 6 laps down, Ray Parson 5 laps, and 5 drivers all 4 laps down, all entirely on pace, which is crazy to think. It's not like any of them have damage from our incidents here tonight. That's just how the cards have fallen here. With 13 laps left to go, I'll tell you what, Brian Sabelski has very confidently settled his name as having led the most laps here tonight. 139 laps led to his name. And it looks like it'll be 2 clean sweeps in a row for that 85 machine, barring anything catastrophic happening here. Of course, 2 cautions so far here tonight. Otherwise, it's been more or less all green flag run. Brian Zabelski is our race leader. He's been the race leader for every single lap here this evening, and he continues to do so. As he tries to put that 122 down another lap, that would be putting Lamar Stevens down 3 laps, and also Johansson right up in front of them. That would be putting Johansson down to 5 laps down. But the next lap car that Sabelski has to set his sights on is the 7 machine of Kevin Alicia, along with the 45 of Mark Kluge. So I'm curious to see if we're going to see those two get lapped here as well. Those two, of course, got put down a lap when they were involved in that first caution. So we will just have to see here, but for the time being, Brian Sabelski seems to be very comfortably leading this race. Pulled it up to nearly a 10-second gap over Joshua Rudolph now. And he is just flying around this raceway. Last time by for Sabelski was a 16.5. The next fastest lap out of anybody is a 16.86 out of Mark Kluge. But as we head through turns 3 and 4, Brian Sabelski is going to be getting the big high five up in the air from Barney the Flagman. 5 laps left to go here at Bristol Motor Speedway before he becomes the first driver to take home a second checkered flag here in season number 22. Just 2.5 more miles, really now 2 more miles to go for that driver, and he will be all set here tonight. Looking around the speedway, there are no drivers actually battling for position on the racetrack right now. The closest battle is over 1.5 seconds apart. That's just ultimately the results of all these drivers being put so many laps down, as we see Sabelski starting to catch up to that 7 machine here with 3 laps left to go. Will we see Sabelski be able to lap Kevin Alicia and put him 2 down? With 2 laps left to go, Sabelski is hot on his heels, but he does have that 121 of Yates in the way, so that might complicate things here. I'd imagine, particularly with the white flag going up, that he really just does not care all that much and is just happy to take home a checkered flag one way or another. That is exactly what Brian Sabelski is going to do. Heading through turns 3 and 4 for the final time, checkered flag goes up in the air. And it's going to be Brian Sabelski taking home the race win here. Second race win to his name here in season number 22. What a solid race it has been here for these drivers. It looks like Joshua Rudolph is going to be bringing it home second, a whole 11.5 seconds behind Sabelski and Kluge, rounding out your top three. So that will continue the streak of the K9P Racing team, having a podium just about every single race in a row. But it's going to be Brian Sabelski taking home the race win. The other two coming up just a little bit short here tonight. Of course, we talked to Sabelski last week when he took home the checkered flag back at Darlington. And he said that he felt pretty confident about Bristol. Bristol's a track that he liked. And evidently that much is so, as he has taken home the race win, led every single lap. And not only is this the second or the first time here in season 22 that a driver has taken home a second win, this is also the first time in Oval Series history that a driver has taken home a second checkered flag at Bristol Motor Speedway. So the streak has finally been broken of a unique winner in every single race at Bristol. That said, while Sabelski pulls it back around down to pit lane, we will be right back. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get some interviews with your top three finishers here this evening. We'll be back in just a moment. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back to Bristol Motor Speedway. 150 laps of competition in the books. 150 laps led to Mr. Brian Zabelski. Brian, you've now clean sweep 2 races in a row. How are you feeling here tonight?
That was fun. The traffic really made it more of a challenge, so I was very worried I was going to get destroyed off of one of the corners by an AI car, but made it through unscathed, and yeah, we get to celebrate here at Bristol. So super happy about that.
Yeah, and of course, coming into tonight's event, you were down basically at the bottom of the standings from those first couple of races you missed here this season. But now 2 races in a row, you're very steadily climbing up the points right now. How are you feeling about potentially vying for a championship here?
Well, hopefully we get a chance to. Car feels fast, and It feels like it's like all those times I had to sit at the back of the field elsewhere and kind of figure out how to drive this car. Really, it's uh it's come back around, and I've learned quite a bit. So the only reason I'm so quick in this car is just because of the fact that I got walloped over the head by uh, some of the fastest guys on iRacing in this car. So
Well, it definitely seems like that walloping has paid off. You only lapped the entire field more or less about 4 times here tonight, so definitely a whole lot of speed under that car. Might have a secret fifth gear, but that's okay. Next week, though,
this car has 5 gears. You're supposed to use them all.
okay, well, that don't count. I don't care. That's why I'm the broadcaster and not the driver. I don't work on these cars. Um, Next week though, heading on over to Texas. Do you think you can make it three in a row over there?
It'll be a big ask. I don't really like Texas as a track. It's not one of my favorites. Uh, it's tough. It's really tough. Yeah, it's just a track where uh, I don't get along with it very well. So we'll have to see how everything shakes out there.
Well, you heard it here first, Roast fans. Brian Sabelski says he does not like the track, so we're gonna have to see next week if he can't pull out a page from the book of Garrett Hess and take home the win after complaining about a track he doesn't like. We will have to see. But for now, Mr. Sabelski, the microphone is all yours. Who do you want to think for making race win number two happen?
Oh, well, of course, thanks to all the fine folks here watching this race and ASRC for hosting the league and everything as always. Of course, thanks to the team at McConey Setup Shop, official setup shop e NASCAR and a sponsor for the Sim Gaming Expo in September. So that will be good to see. I think we'll get to see Jeff and everybody there, which is fantastic. Um, Trying to think who else. Of course, Dragon Roast Coffee. You can use code DeonTiger for 10% off your order. It's at dragonroast.coffee. SM Racing Products, not only for sponsoring series, but my beautiful button box I've got here. Geez, I'm gonna forget like half a dozen things, but um, yeah, thanks to everybody, Denver Racing Social, for hosting their watch parties. If you're in the Front Range, come on down and check things out. Yeah, I think that's it.
Good deal. Well, I'm sure if you forgot half a dozen sponsors, you'll probably have half a dozen more opportunities to be in victory lane to remember them all next time. But for now, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on the race win, and I look forward to seeing you next week at Texas.
Of course, thank you so much, Aiden. Thanks for broadcasting.
And finishing back here in position number two, Mr. Joshua Rudolph. How are you feeling here tonight?
Feeling pretty good. Did better than anticipated and really kind of had to manage a lot. So I'm pretty happy with the result and another top two, another podium. So
Yeah, another podium to your name, and I mean, considering how the rest of the field fared, you get to have the little badge as the only survivor on the lead lap when basically everyone else was 3 to 5 laps down. So I think that means you're doing pretty good for yourself here this evening.
yeah, Brian's got a lot of speed in this car. And so when he shows up, he's kind of the odds on favorite, I would say. Jason is going to be fast when he comes, and Mark's quick too. Um, just sometimes me and him have some issues in terms of just overdriving this car. So I would say that the speed is there. It's just not quite as fast as Brian. Tonight we kind of had a shot to mix up with him if traffic played a little better of a disadvantage for him. But at the end of the day, he was bad fast, and I had to burn my stuff up just to get to him, which means I barely hung on at the end just to not blow a right front. So
Yeah, all in all, I'd say that's probably a pretty solid performance, all things considered. Heading on into Texas next week, how are you feeling about your odds over there? Do you think that might be where you take home your third checkered flag?
I would say you got a better chance of winning the lottery. Turn one is torturous, um, just not good. It's a flat track into turn one. It's really wide and really, really edgy off of two, and then it's basically a rip wide open through three, and then it's super tight off of four. Uh, just not that favorable of a mile and a half. So it should produce really good racing, and with this AI, extra people, and kind of a 1.5 lane mile and a half with some pit strategy, should be a pretty fun race. At least maybe another podium. I don't think a win's really in the bag. I think that my teammate Mark would have a better advantage to be hanging with Brian or Jason. And maybe if Kevin has as much speed as Brian, I would say then we're fighting for a podium.
Definitely seems like a pretty solid plan to me. Of course, Brian has shown up here and has just shown a ridiculous amount of speed here in these past couple of races. So are there any tracks on the schedule that you're really eyeing as like the ones you feel confident you're going to have a leg up over him?
Yeah, I would say that when we go to like Dover, or she's a really treacherous tire wear with AI, we have a chance. But then after that, it's gonna be probably slim to none. I mean, when we go to Texas, I think I'll probably be fighting for third. Glenn up, I think the AI is gonna have me. Um, Charlotte, I have no luck. I have nothing. I can't do anything long there. Nashville, Michigan, another road course. Wilkinsboro, New Hampshire. Type of tracks that ain't really great for me. So I would say probably have to play the off-brand strategy and just kind of like tonight hope for the second caution to just maybe take another set and maybe it's too early kind of deal. But keep fighting for it. Keep running up front. Never know when a mistake happens from somebody. It happened to me last week. Daytona. It's happened tonight. It happens every week. Somebody's got to make a mistake. We're not perfect. So just keep running as fast as we can, manage tires, and run up front. And I think a win will come. It's just, I don't know what track.
Fair enough. Well, you've definitely had some good speed here this season, so I am sure that you're going to be taking home more than one checkered flag here at some point. But for tonight, another podium finish to your name. The microphone is all yours, Mr. Rudolph. Who you want to thank for making it happen?
I got to thank John and Ellie. I burnt my hand pretty bad Thursday. So, and it's my dominant hand. So I've been dealing with that for a few days, and it's pretty tough to drive yet. It's pretty painful, so I got to give a big shout out to them to just give me some burn cream medicine essentially to help me through it. And then the sponsors for the hobby, Joe Getty, love guys at K9P. These guys are really good. It's really fun to just race with them, and then collectively you have a goal to do better every week. Just keep getting better, and then thankfully one day we're gonna get a win. So thankful to everybody that's a part of it, and then all the friends and family, and then last but not least you for broadcasting, Jason and other admins here at ASRC to put the league on and let us have fun on Monday nights, and then the few very fast, very fun to race with guys that show up.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Hopefully your hand gets better soon, and we look forward to seeing you over at Texas.
Thank you.
Then rounding out the tail end of the podium, Mr. Mark Kluge. You're now 2 in a row for finding yourself in an early caution and then walking away with a podium finish anyways. So how are you feeling here tonight?
I am just thankful that I somehow survived. I think that was probably the closest I've become to DQing myself versus or on X limit. Um, I almost spun one of them on a 3 wide situation. That was going to be in my 20X, so I'm just thankful to be able to work my way back and not DQ myself. And then having 6.5 minutes of damage, I'm glad I could just make it through the race without blowing my tires.
Fair enough. You might not be taking home any of the bonus points for having the clean race here this evening, but you are going to be taking home a pretty comfortable points payday for continuing your streak of being on the podium every single race here this season. So that consistency should be paying off for you in the later goings of things. How are you feeling about heading over to Texas next week?
I think it should be another adventure, especially with the AI. Texas can be a tricky track, but um, mile and a halves are usually my favorites, other than a few odd ones. So it should be a fun race next week. Don't know if I'll have anything for Brian, even though he says he's going to suck. Um, I think he tells him that self, and then or says that himself, and then he goes and laps basically the whole field again. So
Fair enough. And I was just talking to about with Rudolph about how the K9P racing team has had a lot of speed here this season. Do you have any tracks coming up here on the schedule where you're feeling pretty confident that that's going to be the one where you take home checkered flag number 3?
um, I've been close to that New Hampshire before. I think Michigan's going to be a fun race, and then I think I got my first win at Homestead, so that one will be another fun track. And then everyone's in the game at Talladega. Um, we'll see how that one goes. I think Daytona was my worst track so far this season because with just how the runs materialize with the AI. So we'll see how that one goes.
Fair enough. All I can really say is that so far here this season, you all have put on a very good show, and I think things will be continuing to be very good between all of y'all for these next, I think it's 12 races left? I don't know. I don't even know how many races long the season is.
Looks like we have maybe 9 in the regular season left and 4 in the chase.
I was somewhere close then, so close enough. Either way, it seems like y'all have a very good season left to go ahead of y'all. For now, though, I won't keep you here all night. I know you got another podium to celebrate. So who do you want to thank for making everything happen for you here tonight, Mr. Kluge?
I'd like to thank you, Jason, and everyone else at ASRC for putting the league on. It's been a great league to be in for the last couple years since I started. SM Racing Products for sponsoring. All my teammates at K9P. My sponsor, Cheesy Bites. And then just want to put out thoughts for the people of Neenah, Menasha, Appleton area. In Wisconsin here, they had a pretty big tornado this morning, so keeping them in our thoughts today. I'm hoping for a speedy recovery for everyone.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on another podium finish, and I look forward to seeing you next week over to Texas.
Yep, see you next week.
So you heard it here first, race fans, your top 3 finishers here tonight, but of course, those weren't the only 3 drivers competing in tonight's event, so how about we take a look at our unofficial race results as they stand here. Of course, it's going to be Brian Sabelski taking home the race win, followed by Rudolph and Kluge. Those are the 3 drivers that we just spoke to here just a moment ago. Back and forth, though, it's going to be the 7 machine of Kevin Alessia with Ted Wallace rounding out your top 5 here tonight. That's going to be Lamar Stevens back in 6th. Again, I'm pretty sure that's the best finish Stevens has gotten here this season. That's going to be Mike Rossi back in 7th. Mick Jacobs in 8th with Doc Jones and Emery Jackson rounding out your top 10. Then it's going to be Cole Matrick back in 11th, followed by Jason Williams in 12th. Danny Yates in 13th with Bo Johansson in 14th. Then we have Ray Parson back in 15th with Curtis Colwell rounding out your 16-car field here tonight. That said, that's just about all we got here from Bristol Motor Speedway here this evening. 150 laps, 75 miles in the books here this evening. And Brian Sabelski ultimately going to be not only the first driver to take home 2 wins here in Season 22, but the first driver to take home 2 wins at this track in the ASRC Oval Series. Next week, heading on over to Texas Motor Speedway for a 100-lap event on over there, 150 miles. Should be a pretty good one. We heard all the drivers talking about how much they are not very fond of Texas Motor Speedway. In my opinion, the more drivers complain about not liking a track, generally speaking, the better the racing should be. So I think that's bound to be a pretty darn fun one. For now, though, that's all we've got for you here this evening. Thank you all for tuning in and supporting the league. And as always, we will see y'all next time. Have a good evening, race fans.